Welcome to another episode of Equalizer, where we bring you conversations that matter with people who have shaped the course of national security and public policy. Today, we are joined by a truly extraordinary guest, Mr. Robert Bunch. Robert's career has expanded some of the most critical and sensitive frontiers in American security. He began as a Marine reconnaissance corpsman, serving on the front lines and gaining first-hand insight into the leadership and resilience. He then transitioned to the Department of Defense, managing counterterrorism programs at a pivotal time for global and national security. Robert later joined the Central Intelligence Agency, spending 15 years overseeing crucial operations and ultimately serving as Deputy Chief in the Office of the Inspector General at the CIA, enhancing the agency's effectiveness and integrity. Now he leads his own consulting firm, ABY Consulting LLC, advising organizations on defense, intelligence, and oversight. In this conversation, we will explore Robert's unique journey to the Marine Corps, the Department of Defense, and the CIA. We'll discuss the challenges and insights from his career and learn about his transition to the private sector. Let's get started. Welcome, Robert. Thank you for being here with Equalizer. Let me ask you, how do you start your career in the Marine Corps?
I joined the Navy in 1990 and was going to be a corpsman. And there were two paths. You could be a corpsman who's on a ship or a corpsman who is with the Marine Corps. And after going through a year of medical training and a year of clinical rotations, I made the decision to go with the Marine Corps. So I went to the Marine Corps side of that house and then did a screening call to go recon, did the screening call. We started, I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't know anything about that stuff, but we started with 40, two of us passed, and timing just worked out. God works in mysterious ways, but timing worked out. And as soon as I passed, I was put in a platoon on a team with no operational training. And then I went through recon school, passed. I was out for maybe 2 months, went to Army Airborne School, and then went to, a week after I graduated, I went to Marine Combat Dive School to get certified as a Navy scuba diver and Marine combat diver. Went to commando school, and then we started deploying. And the primary mission set at the time was Counter-Narcotics. I did that from 90 to 98, and the plan was to, I didn't know if I was going to stay in or retire, but I was at the point where I had to make a decision. And the counter drugs had died down, 9/11 hadn't happened. The only thing going on was the Bosnia war criminal apprehension thing, and Delta Force and SEALs had that. And so we were nowhere close to being involved in it. We did have a platoon somewhere in that area, but even if we were to be involved in it, I was looking at 2 years before we'd go. So I made the decision that nothing's going on. I'd already done all the cool guy stuff, been operational, trained guys, and I made the decision to get out. I wanted to go to college, get a degree, then go to law school. And so that's where I was at on that. And then 9/11 kicked off. So I got out, started school, and then 9/11 happened.
And then after that, where did you go after that looking for a job? Did you start working for DOD, or did you start working for the CIA at that time?
No, actually, I was working for a law firm. I got a job working at a law firm because since I wanted to go to law school, they were hiring. It was the largest law firm in Florida. Got a job working there, and they were awesome. Then 9/11 happened, and I'd been out for 2.5 years at that time, and I didn't realize how relevant and recent my experience was. So I didn't know if I'd be even qualified to get back in the game. But a guy I was going to college with was and I didn't know him before we started school together. He was a SWIC is what they call them, and those are phenomenal dudes. Don't get me wrong, uh, and they are in the special warfare community. But he knew what my background was. I knew what his was, and he had gotten pulled in to this counterterrorism program. And he reached out and said, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And in my mindset, it was I could work at this law firm for X amount of dollars, and out of scope of what I know anything about, but preparing me for law school, or I could go back doing the types of things that I used to do, and I walk around in tennis shoes, shorts, a t-shirt all day on the beach, teaching guys how to shoot, fist fight, do kill capture, hostage rescue, and make more money. So as a 29-year-old, that's not a heavy lift to figure out what you want to do. So I started the counterterrorism program, managing that for the Center for Anti-Terrorism for the DoD. It was the Center for Anti-Terrorism and Navy Security Forces. So I was doing that for less than a year, and they asked me to take over managing that program at my site in Mayport, Florida. And so I took it over, and I did that while I was continuing college. As soon as I got my degree, I wanted to get back in the fight, not be in a training capacity, but be back in the fight as far as operationally. So I sent resumes out to everybody, and that was a great job. The first two jobs, recon and then that counterterrorism thing, phenomenal jobs. I met some of the best people on the planet and learned a lot. And you learn a lot about yourself as well. But it was time to move on. And I applied to everybody, FBI, DEA, CIA, air marshals, applied to everybody. And I did not get a call from anybody but the air marshals. And I got a call from the air marshals, and they gave me a conditional offer of employment. And that was 2 years after I sent out applications. And I accepted. And I was actually driving to meet from Jacksonville, Florida to Orlando to meet the air marshal recruiter. And I don't know who this guy is. I don't know his name, or I can't remember it, but he was a good dude. And as I'm driving there, I get a phone call, and it was CA. They asked me if I was still interested, and I said, yeah. So I had to pick one, air marshals or CA. And so I picked CA because for some reason, well, I know what the reason is. I can't unpack on here, but they wouldn't allow you to have CA wouldn't allow you to have two background investigations going on simultaneously. So I picked CA, and I let the air marshal guy know that, hey man, I can't do it. I'm looking at somewhere else. And he's like, okay, that's cool. I'm going to be sitting in this job for 3 years. Or 2 years. I just took it over. And I couldn't tell him who had called, but when I told him that, they told me I had to pick one or the other because I couldn't have, for this specific organization, I couldn't have two backgrounds going on at the same time. He knew who it was. So he's like, I'll be here for a while, man. If it doesn't work out, give me a call and I'll set you up with a class date. So then I started the process for CIA. It took a while, but I started that in like late 04, early 05, and I didn't get step inside the building until late 06. So it took that long to go through the clearance process.
And how long after you joined did they send you out to the farm to start your training?
I never went to the farm.
Your goal when you joined the CIA, you wanted to be in the operational paramilitary type of group.
Yeah, I did.
And what happened?
Well, whenever I applied, the job I applied for was it was a paramilitary operations officer, and at the time I met all the qualifications. Then I'm going through the process, and got hired, and I came up here, and I met with when you come up, there's somebody who greets you. They meet you, and then you do It's completely different now. That was almost 20 years ago. But I'm meeting my guy, for lack of the job placement guy. I wouldn't call him a handler, but I met with this guy. And since I had already been through all the cool guy stuff in the military, I knew that I wouldn't have to do all of that. The only thing I would have to go through to be a paramilitary officer was go through the case officer's course. And this was in October of 06. And I knew that that wasn't starting until late winter, early spring. And so I was like, hey, so, and I'd only been at CA for a week. And I'm like, so where am I going? And he's like, while I'm awaiting training. And he said, yeah, about that. You're not going to be a ground branch guy, a paramilitary officer, basically. I was like, why not? And he said, you're not qualified. I said, what do you mean I'm not qualified? He's like, no, you're not qualified. You were never an officer in the military. What I can do, though, if that is the job that you want, I can walk you down to the contracting office and we can shift you from being a staff officer, which is a blue badger, to being a contractor, which is a green badger. It was not a requirement for a contractor to do that job, to have been an officer in the military. It was for a staff officer. And I don't know what it was before then. I don't know what it is now, but that's how it was broken down to me. And I was like, so what am I going to do? And he's like, well, here are these 4 jobs. And he told me what the jobs were, and I picked one, but the training didn't start until after the first of the year. It started in January. And this was mid-October at this time. I was like, all right. So they assigned me to Near East Division at the HC, and I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea, man. And finally, the guy who's in charge of the office, the chief of security for that office, he's like, hey, man, we got to get you out of here. You're just in the way. And I wasn't breaking anything or doing anything wrong, but he's like, you've not burned down the building. You were in special operations, so I know I can send you overseas and just give you a taste of the HC. And so I was like, okay. And so I went to the Middle East until from late October till right before Christmas, and got a taste of what it was, and came back. And then I started my first job, which was nothing that I wanted to do. At the back end, it did pay dividends. I had a lot of exposure to the HC doing that job, but I did that job for about 1.5 years, and then I did protective work for about 5-6 years. Left there, went to internal affairs. Well, it's called Special Investigations Branch, and that is not classified. So, and you and I discussed about it previously. I know how to balance between saying something classified and something not. But I went there to investigate leaks, and I was doing that for 2 years. And I learned a lot, but it was riding a desk, and I did not want to do that. So I had to look, and I only had 2 places to go at the time. Either go back to do protective work as a supervisory special agent, because I'd already been an assistant supervisory, so I could roll right in and do that job, or go to the inspector general. And I'd already missed a lot of years with my daughter when I was traveling that much, and my son was only 3. When I started traveling, my daughter was 4, and I missed a lot of pivotal years. My son was 3 whenever I had to make the decision to go to the inspector general or to do protective work, and I didn't want to miss those years. I already missed out on one, and you don't, it's like I told my daughter once, you didn't learn how to become a daughter until I learned how to become a father. We did that at the same time. I didn't want, and I didn't know it, but I didn't want my son I didn't want to miss a lot of things with my son. So I made the decision to not get back on the road to do protective work and go to the inspector general's office. I was there I wasn't there that long, and then I took over and began leading a division of men and women for our headquarters office.
And basically, they made you a 1811, a special agent. You went through the criminal investigative school, right?
There's something called the CA Act. To answer your question, we went through the same course that the 1811s go to, but there is something, the CA Act, where CA officers cannot have they can't have law enforcement authority. So I was certified as a federal agent, but you know this, man. You can't you can't start that due to the mandatory retirement age of 57. You can't get certified as a federal agent and expect to do 20 years to retire post 37. When I went through that course, I was 44. It didn't apply to me, but to be to have law enforcement authority, it's not applicable. So I think they called us 1810s, but we went through the majority of my class were ATF agents. So we did that, but we didn't have law enforcement authority. Now, with that said, if I would have wanted to cross deck and go to somewhere else, to DA or FBI or whatever, I was aged out of those. ATF I was as well, but I could go in and work in an 1811 capacity for one of their inspector general, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, or the U.S. Attorney's Office as an investigator.
You know what? When you say that, yeah, I had two guys in my class that were, both of them were attorneys, working for the U.S. Attorney's Office. They were, again, I was 44. I believe one was 30, the other's like 37, 38, that they were working as attorneys at the U.S. Attorney's Office, but they were young enough where they wanted to get in the field and do stuff. So they wanted to go be special agents for U.S. Attorney's Office. And so, or for Department of Justice, not Department of Justice as far as FBI. And people think those are synonymous. They're not, but that's what they wanted to do. And so they came back and got certified as federal agents. And I could have cross-decked and gone there, IRS, but no, that was not something that piqued my interest.
How robust is the internal oversight at the agency?
Are you talking about from the Inspector General's office, or
right. from your caseload? How serious do they take their internal investigations at the agency?
Okay, so if you're doing, like when I was working in Special Investigation Branch, they operate at the local law enforcement level. They don't even have that much training. So the internal affairs at CA, they're not well-trained people. And I work there, so I'm not saying that in a pejorative lens. I'm saying it through a practical and a realistic lens. They operated at a local law enforcement level, and that gets a 71% conviction rate. In the Inspector General's office, they operated at a federal agent level because everyone there was a federal agent. That's a 95% conviction rate. And so you can say that the Inspector General was much better than the Office of Security, Internal Affairs. The practical way of looking at it is this. The Office of Security had to look at everything. We got to pick and choose what we looked at. And everything was, and I'm saying this as having been a manager there, everything boils down to, first of all, national security. Second is liability mitigation. So if a case comes across the desk there, you'd look at it and you would either do something called a preliminary review, and then that would turn into something called an FI, which is full investigation. So it goes one of two ways. But the majority of it is you could see if something came across the desk that was perfunctory, or if something had some actual teeth to it. Well, if it did have actual teeth to it, what was our primary goal at that point? We need to pass that. We need to refer that to Department of Justice, back to the component who referred it to us, or the component who had equities into that, or we take it. So the caseloads, they weren't heavy. No, we didn't have that many. I mean, I think at one time I might have had, at any given time, I would be running between 8 to 12 cases. So it wasn't that big, but there's something that people don't understand when it comes to inspectors general, is they have no sanctioning authority. They don't. They will conduct their investigation, provide their findings to either corroborate or invalidate the allegations, provide their findings back to the component, and then the component is responsible for sanctioning those people. Now, if it was a federal crime, not some administrative stuff, if it was a federal crime, then we can't do anything about it as far as sanctioning the individual. Once we investigate it and go cradle to grave, we would then have to do a crimes referral to the U.S. Attorney's Office. And a lot of times what would happen is, let's say a case came across that had sensitive equities associated with it, and I would call the U.S. Attorney, the AUSA. If I wasn't talking to him daily, I was talking to him weekly, and I would be like, hey man, and he was cool, but I'd be like, hey man, here's what we have. And we're talking on an open line, but he's cleared. We can say things without saying it. And he would come back and say, CA will not declassify this case, any information associated with it for prosecutorial purposes. I'd say, yeah, I understand that. He's like, no, I'm not even going to accept this, to do an arraignment or an indictment. So he's deferred it back to us. So then at the IG, well, we can't do anything to the individual who's alleged, or the office who's alleged to have done something. What we do is refer to their supervising component and tell them, here are the findings. The United States Attorney has declined prosecution in this matter. We have a copy of the declination letter. Ball is in your court, so you handle it however you want to. And typically what would happen then is either the component would sanction them, or they would look at the individual and then find something to punt to the Office of Security, to have the Office of Security handle it through the administrative realm. So it gets murky, but again, man, having been there for 15 years, I know how the sausage is made. I've seen it all, so it's fine. I didn't want to protract that, but I was trying to give you the most comprehensive answer as possible.
Let me ask you something. Describe an instance where ethical consideration clash with operational necessities.
Ah, man. There was there are several, man. I'm trying to think about where the ethical. Okay, we had a case one time. Good guy, really good guy. And I did have this case where the ethical implications of what he did, it is what it is. I don't fault the guy, and I didn't know him prior to this, but the case came across my desk, and they wanted me to do it, and I didn't want to do the case because I had zero disagreement with the actions the guys that he took on target, but they wanted me to do the case because he was a frogman. I'm a frogman, not a SEAL, a recon guy, but wanted us. They thought I might be able to get him to flip. And this guy had been under investigation over the same incident for about 12 years. And what he did operationally, you could look at and say that the guy saved lives that day. Ethically, you could say the guy committed 4 felonies. And when I called him in, he copped to everything. But at the end of the day, so there's you have the moral and operational ramifications and where those two things divorce. Someone who is of a different mindset than me could say, no, this guy, what he did was horrendous. And me looking at it, having been in his world, no, I look at it that, yeah, somebody got hurt, but in the process of that, it saved 70 American lives. So I don't have a problem with that. But now on the, so that's the way to dissect that in that case about dissecting operational and ethical considerations. But at the end of the day, I think that, and I'm not here to promote nor to murder CA at all, but I think they got it right because the guy admitted to doing what he did, and I can't go into details on what it was or where it was, but he admitted to everything, and it is what it is. It was 4 felonies. And had he not admitted to it, we had nothing, but no, he copped to it. But it was overseas, on target, and first of all, we have no sanctioning authority, number one. Number two, due to jurisdictional issues, since it was on target, the Justice Department had no authority on it. State Department had no authority on it because it wasn't on a station or base. So there were jurisdictional issues, and then also through an operational lens, a lot of the things, even if they would have found a way to pursue prosecution, to arrest, arraign, and indict, there's no way that the facts associated with the events would ever surface in court, but because CA would not declassify for prosecutorial purposes. So we have the ethical, we have the operational, and then we have the legal associated with that.
Why do you think corruption cases arise within such a secretive organization?
Well, whenever I joined in 2006, during that time frame, the DNI's office had just been developed. I can't recall exactly what year it is, but I did. I spent 2 years CA, then I became a protective guy. And then after that, you can go one of two tracks. You can go to the DNI's office or you can go to Director CA's office. But you can't pick that. And they sent me, being a new guy, to the DNI's office. So I went to the DNI's office, and it was fun. It was cool. I thought they were doing good stuff. And I was only there for a year, and then they transferred me to CA. And when I looked at CA, and when I got there, and I would hear them talking about if you're in the car with an aide or if you're in the 7th floor and you're hearing talks. At the time, they looked at the DNI's office as a bunch of nerds, that these guys are clowns. And I don't think that's an inaccurate view, because the DNI's office, Director of National Intelligence, they were just getting their footing. They were trying to figure out how to manage this, how to herd these cats. So I understood that mindset back then, but as time has moved on, and because CA thought they were the cool kids in school, that we have no oversight. Now, as time has moved on, they've recognized that no, we do have some oversight. So if Congress, if HPSI or House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, Senate Select Committee, if they reach out and they say, we need this or we need this, we can't stall anymore. We have to provide it. And if you try to pull that bullshit of, well, it's too classified. Okay, it's fine. We can do it in a closed door hearing. But no, we need testimony on this. So I think CA over the past 20, 22 years is starting to learn that they will be held accountable, number one. But then number two, the best way to not lose a fight is to not get into a fight. So if there is corruption there in the 7th floor, well, let's break it down. You have the 7th floor and you have components underneath the 7th floor. If a component gets wind that some shit's about to get spun up, they will try to stop the bleeding and start the breathing before it gets out of control. Because once it gets to the 7th floor, if it's that big of a deal that it's made it to the 7th floor, it's going to Congress. So the corruption, not corruption, because I don't think it's a corrupt organization. I think they're well-meaning, and I think there are thousands of, I don't know what the numbers are, but there are men and women there who are trying to do the best for their country. But when you're operating in the gray space and decision-making becomes opaque, which I was talking to a guy the other night, and you do have to recognize your own moral elasticity if you're even working for that organization. Once it goes to that point, if you're rolled up for doing something, you're on an island and they are not coming for you. And the allegations, even if they have or have not been corroborated, they will do the best they can to make sure those allegations do not make it to the light of day. They don't want that getting to the public eye. And I'm saying that for somebody who's been inside and know how, I'm very familiar with how the sausage is made, but that's just a fact of life, man. And I would be more than open to challenge somebody to that point of view. And some people will probably watch this who's been inside, and they will say, son of a bitch, that guy's calling it out. He's right, but I wouldn't step forward and say that. But that's just a fact of life, William. So it is what it is.
The fact on this asymmetric wars now, and so many private contractors getting into the game of working with the intelligence agencies. How do you handle the cases of malfeasance overseas when there's different jurisdictions, different laws in those countries? Some of them might not have diplomatic immunity. What type of coverage do they get in the event that they mess up?
You're talking about a contracting company, right?
Right.
They know that if they do something, if they mess up, that there's another contracting company waiting in the wings to come in and replace them. So as far as punitive action or administrative actions against a company who has a contractor or the company in itself, their business model, if they're doing something wrong, you handle your business. That's it. If, like, let's say that you got a guy overseas who's working for a contracting company and he gets in a DUI wreck or something like that, we're not sanctioning, but you're going to lose your contract if you don't get this guy the hell out of here. So it's a liability reduction measure, and that's one of the main reasons why they use contracting companies. You handle your people, we'll handle ours. You're working for us. If you want to be on this multi-million-dollar contract, we need assurances on the front end that you guys aren't going to fuck something up, or if one of your employees do, that you will sanction that. Basically, they're not coming back.
How does the CIA handle the gray area with allies? Those may be partners, but with questionable ethics.
Well, it's the cost of doing business, man. And so, no, you have to look at it's basic economics. Look at what's in it for you. What are you willing to spend on this? And I'm not only talking about money, but the fiscals, the political capital, again, your own ethics, your own morals. What are you willing to spend to get your objective? And you look at it through that lens. And for someone who's just starting it, it would seem to be a very daunting premise to take a look at and consume and digest and figure out an outcome. But being a grown-ass man and having been doing between special operations, counterterrorism, and CIA since I was 18, so it's been 37 years. So it's been a while, man. Or no, I'm sorry, 35 years. It's not that hard if you have to go to a foreign country and do something to manipulate them or to capitalize on them or to leverage resources. It's organic to CIA, man. And if somebody ever tells you, and I can understand why people would be like, I don't trust CIA, I don't trust them either. But if you were sitting across from me and I was trying to pitch you for something, if I was sitting across from myself, I would be, knowing my background, I would be very skeptical. But that's why we have people undercover and why you don't need to know my background, because then I'm already showing my hand, because you know I'm there not for your best interest. You're going to get something out of it, but I'm going to get a hell of a lot more. And that's the same way the United States looks at, or the intelligence apparatus. That's the way they look at other countries. We're going to do whatever it is in our best interest and until we butt up to the diminishing returns point. So it's not a heavy lift.
One of the hardest things is to recruit someone overseas is to have that person betray everything they believe in and betray their own country. And at the time of recruitment, most of the time, people are at the worst time. You can't recruit somebody that is happy. You have to recruit somebody that's in need, and that you cultivate that relationship, and you gain their trust. You become empathetic to their needs. And most of the time it works, and the person could be recruited And it's happening to our sailors, our Marines, people in the Army, at all ranks, that with China and other countries um, fall in, fall as prey to these organizations and betray the trust of the United States. Is that your take on how the recruitment process happens?
Well, the recruitment process is you spot, assess, recruit, develop. That's how you do it. And you, first of all, you look for people who have access to, and what I'm telling you is not classified. People know this. You look for people who have access to whatever the hell you're wanting to find out, whatever information or systems or products, or you look for people who have access to that. Then once you find an audience, a target, you look for a target-rich environment for that. Once you find that, you will look at people who may be in need, but I was having dinner with a buddy of mine's dad one time, and this guy was a case officer. I'd been at CA for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. And he asked me, he's like, how do you get somebody to talk to you? I said, you find their incentives. And he's like, well, what if they don't have any incentives? Like they're not somebody who's in dire need or something, or somebody who likes women or cars or drugs. What if they don't have those incentives? I said, well, you look for their disincentives. So I'm telling him things he already knows. And he's like, yeah, I get that. But what if you can't identify an incentive nor a disincentive? I said, well, you create one. That is what it is. You create an incentive. And I think that the people that they're looking at, I think the guy that just got rolled up, I think he was an enlisted Navy guy. He got rolled up for giving something to the Chinese. Yeah,
Who's going to have the manuals
yes.
for repair manuals and for some type of craft.
I don't know if it was for, I don't know exactly what your audience is, but I don't want to say anything that might offend somebody, but I don't know if it was Chinese or Asian hookers, or if it was money or a visa, a Chinese visa for somebody. I don't know what it was, but you look for the low-hanging fruit. And if you don't have to create an incentive, that's a beautiful thing. If you can find what might incentivize them, then you go that route. You definitely don't want to create a disincentive, where basically a disincentive is a threat, whether it's a threat to a physical threat or a monetary threat, a reputational threat. Yeah, that would be the last case resort. So if you don't find a positive incentive, if you don't find an incentive for them, you create one. And I think that now, I think that people are probably more susceptible to that, especially if you have a E4 service member who is, I don't even know what the base pay is, but it's making below the poverty level. And they have, so let's do the math on that. They're making, their income is less than, they would be considered impoverished. And at the same time, they have access to either technology or secrets. Why in the hell would you want to pay someone with that type of access so little money? Because that's prey, man. If that makes sense.
Right. How much does ego and internal politics drive the decisions within the agency?
How much does ego and politics?
How much does ego and internal politics drive the decision within the agency?
People are not going to be a fan of this answer, but I would say it's at least 90%, at minimum 90%. And when the global war on terror was going on, I would say it was probably 60% that was driven by ego and politics. Now that we're not kinetic, as far as, I don't know what's going on with drones and that technology, but as far as warfighters on the ground, no, it's going to be, ego is the biggest thing. Politics, yeah, but ego is the biggest thing. Like, you could have two guys who were working together 20 years ago, and they got sideways with each other over something, and then they go different ways, and then they come back on something. And guy letter A has the best plan on the planet. Guy number B is one of the decision makers on this, and due to his ego, he's like, no, we're not doing that. That's dumb. And even though it's glaringly apparent that guy number A's plan is the best solution to this, guy number B is the shot caller on it, and he's like, no, we're not doing it. From some shit that stemmed from an old beef that stemmed like 20 years ago. And that is, if you see these talking heads on podcasts or on the news, everybody plays nice, and they're cool, but you get them behind closed doors, and they're like, again, if you're averse to foul language, cover your ears, but they'll be like, fuck that guy. In person or in public, they'll be like, oh yeah, hey brother, how you doing? It's good to see you, and come in for a hug. But as soon as they get away, they're still hanging on from a beef from 20 years ago, even if this guy had the best plan on the planet to solve whatever problem it is. And you would think that is a mindset that you would evolve from after about junior high school, but no, it's that mindset on steroids at the HC. So ego, number one. Politics, it does weigh heavily.
If you could change one rule of law governing intelligence, what will it be?
I'm not the guy who says don't run with scissors, and I am not a fan of micromanaging at all. Being a recon guy, the leashes were off of us, man, and it made us good. But we knew if we either failed or we operated outside of the parameters, that we were going to pay the price on the back end. So I embraced the lack of oversight. However, at the HC, you got to understand. I'll say it. I don't care. You've got headquarters, and if you walk into headquarters, it looks like New York Fashion Week. Everybody's beautiful, good looking, dressed nice, tall, thin. And the outlier buildings, which are covert sites, that was the town of the uglies. Everybody there didn't look like supermodels. And if a CIA guy's watching this, they'll hear it and they'll laugh, and that's the truth. But it's a high school mentality. It's almost like Hollywood. It's and I'm not here to shit on CA, so don't take it that way. I'm giving you having worked in CA for 8 years and then at CA Inspector General for 7 years. I've seen both ends of it, so I see how things go, and I've seen it in wartime and in not wartime. It's I think that if you when I got hired, I was 36. And the majority of people who got hired at the same time as me, they were 23, 24. They didn't have any world experience, and they got thrust into this environment, and they drank the Kool-Aid that everybody here is Jason Bourne, and we're untouchable. Now, I think the best thing that could occur, and people are going to shit on this idea, is far more oversight. And the reason why I say far more oversight is that if people think that you're being watched, and you will suffer a punitive action if you knowingly and willfully or neglect something and it costs an operation or costs lives, then if they know the oversights behind them, then that's where it lies. If you took the leash off, you would have a problem, 1,000,000%. So, and people who know me would probably be shocked for me to say more oversight would be the best thing to have the HC perform better. And hate to say it, because I don't want oversight on me. And if I was working there, I wouldn't want it. But I didn't step out of bounds either. I mean, I didn't do dumb shit. So, but I've seen several cases where people have. But if people knew that there was, if God was watching you, that I'm talking about, the eye was watching you in every decision you made, I'll cut you loose. I'll give you rope so you go out and you be autonomous and handle whatever problem you're faced with, knowing that I have fidelity in you that you'll do that. That's cool. And if you break something, but you were doing your best, I get it. But if you're reckless and you go out there and do something dumb and it fucks up an entire operation and burns assets, platforms, then no, you're going to be held accountable. And if people were aware of that, I think that would minimize, I think it would minimize the destruction process as far as national security, as far as what CA does with national security.
How does the rise of digital intelligence tools change the job of a CIA officer?
I've not internally regarding digital out in the field.
Yeah,
When you say
in the job of a CIA officer, whether he's overseas, how has the use of the tools, the digital intelligence tools, changed the job? Because if you go back to the 1950s or 60s, the job was a complete different job. You were not working with all of this technology at your disposal. How has it enhanced or hurt the work of a CIA officer?
I don't think it's hurt. I think it is enhanced. Like when I was in the military and we're out doing land nav, we did not have GPSs. We had to use a lensatic compass and a protractor. And that was 98. So we're looking at 27 years ago now, or even when I got to CA in 06, you have a GPS where you just plug in your coords and it's going to lead you right there. I don't have to look at a map. It's good to know that. So digital technology in that realm has, in that world, has helped dramatically. But then also as far as technological exploitation, where you can listen in to phone calls, where you can geolocate somebody due to technology. No, I think it's great. I think it's awesome. But you have to understand that if we're doing it to them, there's a high likelihood they're doing the same thing to us. So now we're racing each other to figure out a way to defeat their ways. They're trying to do the same thing to us, to defeat their ways to exploit our technological capabilities. But it is what it is. If we're not using it, we're going to be surpassed by it. So let's employ those methods and also look at ways to prevent being exploited. At the same time, look at ways to exploit our adversaries.
How can the agency prevent a WikiLeaks type, Snowden type of situation in the future?
Well, I don't know how you view Snowden, but the way I look at it is he was bringing to light the overreach of the United States government into the U.S. citizens. That was one of the many things he brought to light. How can you prevent that? You have to thoroughly vet whoever you're going to provide access to, number one. And then number two, you have to monitor their system use. And then number three, let's say that I am working there and I have access to some very, very, very sensitive information. I'm like a super user on a computer or a privileged user. I have access to that, and then I either move to another job at the agency or I leave. I get a contracting job, or I just decide I don't want to be there anymore. It is what it is. I don't know if they do this. I'm saying this through a practical lens about how I would do it. Is you initiate due diligence investigation on that user's accesses. Number one, where are they touched? Where are they not touched? What are they printed? What are they not printed? And you have to understand that's not a Fourth Amendment violation as far as the U.S. and search and seizure stuff. As soon as you log on to one of those computers, as soon as you pick up one of the phones in the office, there's a ticker that comes across the screen on a computer. It says, by use of this, you're subject to monitoring. Same thing on the phone. So it's pretty much, there's no Fourth Amendment violation. So number one, to vet the people. Number two, to monitor their uses. Number three is if they do leave, do a due diligence investigation to see what they had accessed and if they had removed any of that from the agency, whether it's by printing or whether it's by downloading with a thumb drive, which when I was there, and again, it's been 4 years, you couldn't have thumb drives in the building unless it's for a part of an investigation that somebody brings in for evidentiary value. You put it in a Faraday bag and then it goes into the evidence vault. Excuse me. And if you want to access the data on that, sorry, you take it into a room in a Faraday bag. You take it into a room and put it on a computer called an enclave, which the computer is a standalone. There's nothing coming in or going out. And then you can scrub the data via that. But the means have to be proactive, and also if the proactive measures don't work, you have to have a robust reactive means to handle it.
Cases like James Ames and other cases that the agency has handled over the years. I have a few of the names of the cases. Let me go through them here. Where the lives of people and the lives of sources of information overseas were compromised, and in a lot of situations they got eliminated because of the damage these case offices did to the agency. What is the agency doing now that they have had so many people go rogue?
I think it's a vetting process, number one. I think and if you look at it, right now, they're not hiring. You can go on their website and it will have all these jobs listed. And very few people are getting hired right now. It's not like when I got hired, number one. And when I got hired, it was pretty strict hiring standards. But now there are less people getting hired and it's stricter. So number one, the vetting process. Number two is making employees aware that if you step outside of bounds, you have to put guardrails. It's human nature, man. People are going to do dumb shit. You put guardrails in place to incentivize them not to do it, to incentivize them to be a good employee, and to disincentivize them from doing dumb shit. Put that in place. And then also you have to understand, though, that the majority of people who do bad shit like at the CIA, as far as flipping or going rogue, the worst that happens to them is they get fired and their clearance yanked. Very rarely do they go to prison, because if it makes its way to the arrest, arraign, indictment by a grand jury, the U.S. attorney, it's like we were speaking about earlier, he or she is not going to have an appetite to go after this. If they know the topic at hand, CIA is not going to declassify for prosecutorial purposes. And these people, they know that. They're aware of it. So they know that more than likely nothing's going to happen to them. And CIA they do have to do a better job at sanctioning people. I mean, let's say you've got a guy who committed $20,000 in TNA fraud, and he is a badass at CIA, but he's got $20,000 TNA fraud allegations levied against him. It can't be proven nor disproven, and they go fire this guy and take his clearance. So that's on the one end. Then you have on the other end a lady that over 10 years has repeatedly came into the office, and it always happened to coincide when she would do this. It would happen to coincide when her background investigation was about to pop up. She would come in and be like, "Oh, I accidentally took these documents home, and they somehow made its way into my purse or into a folder I had." and it had TSSCI, Orcon, no form information in it. And she's like, oh, this was inadvertent. I didn't mean to. And she brings it back, gets a security violation. But now, when she goes to do a polygraph, since she's under background investigation, not an event-driven, a real background investigation, now she thinks that her conscience is clear. In her own mind, she believes that she's done nothing wrong since she self-reported, is what they call it, because she took this stuff home. And if she repeatedly is doing that, it's either because she's just an idiot, he or she, because they're just an idiot, or because there's something nefarious going on. So somebody like that, they should be fired right, do it once, let's sanction you somehow, so that's going to sting you and you'll know not to do it again. But for them to have somebody that's done 10 or 12 improper handling of classified information, and they suffer no sanctioning on it, what's that do on the back end? That encourages the person to do that.
The cases that I mentioned, not all of them are CIA employees. Ames, Hansen, he was FBI. Montes was CIA. Nicholson, Ma, Regan, Pelton, Pitts, Polar, and Chin. Those are some of the few well-known cases. The major damage was done by Ames and Hansen. I mean, when you have, assets losing their life because an agent decides to take money and to buy a Jaguar, buy Rolex watches, live above the means of his salary. And why did it take the agency and also the FBI such a long time to find out who was leaking the information? Was it because they were well respected and people within the agency were protecting them because of the nepotism within these agencies? Or was it that they just didn't want to know who was doing it?
Well, I believe it was the Hansen case that he was investigating himself. So how are you going to catch that guy when they knew they had somebody that was providing information, and then Hansen is essentially investigating himself? And I could be screwed up on that, but I'm pretty sure it was Hansen. But with Ames, I don't know. I still don't know. And honestly, I don't give a shit. I've not looked at it that much. But I think that I think both those guys were drunks, if I'm not mistaken. And one of them, I think they were both narcissists. But I think Hansen was doing it for the fiscals on it, if I'm not mistaken. But anytime there's a loss of life, that sucks. Regardless, if it's a bad guy or a pedophile or something like that, that's cool. I don't have a problem with it. But an innocent loss of life, those things suck. All the other cases you mentioned, I'm not sure how many people died in those. A lot of people died in the Hansen and Ames cases. And the other people, Hansen, Ames, they went to prison. Montez, she went to prison. And I think everybody went to prison, didn't they?
Yeah, all of them that I mentioned went to prison. I selected a few just to give you a little bit of a taste of some of the cases. I mean, every organization is bad apples, but there's like a pattern and practice with some of the organizations where their internal affairs of the IG, Inspector General, or whatever entity does these investigations, they dare more to protect the image of the agency, so the agency doesn't get egg in their face, so the bosses within the agency don't have to answer to anyone else. They don't have to, go through the media and the scandal. So it's almost like a preventive measurement. And there's also a point that if the people being investigated are connected to the higher-ups of those departments or agencies, that they try to let it ride to see if they go back on track, if there's no loss of life, if there's no big issue, to see if they could just forget that it happened. Let's get into a little bit about what happens to whistleblowers within the agency.
Well, first of all, based on what you're saying about, before you asked about what happened to whistleblowers, that you think the Inspector General's office is designed to basically reduce, it's a liability reduction tool to help whichever organization it is to save face. Is that where you were going at with that?
Right, because I know that in police departments, most of the internal affairs is there to protect the image of the department. They don't want a police scandal. They don't want scandals happening. Is that the same thing that happens within the IG's office, in the CIA or the other agencies?
So that's what you think, right?
That's what I believe, yeah.
Yeah, okay, you're wrong on that. And the reason why I say that is because you should know that. It's not a think thing, William. It's a know. You hit it on the head. So don't think it. You know that that's exactly what it's designed for. Think about it. Any inspector, so you nailed it on the head, but don't think it, know it. Any Inspector General, they're designed to do investigations. And then if something does rise to the criminal level, how bad is this going to impact our organization? Whatever the incident was, allegation, do we have to refer this to the Department of Justice? Or can we punt it back to the component with equities and have them handle this? So now we're good. We're fine. So no, you're absolutely right, William. 100%. And then your follow-on question to that. So I agree with you, but don't think it, know it. You're absolutely right. But your follow-on question to that was what?
My following question was, I lost the train of thought. Listening to the answer. Let me ask you another question until I get my train of thought again.
That's fine.
What unique challenges do you foresee when you were doing your job as an investigator in the IG's office?
You know what? We had a very strong management team, and it was my boss. He was a guy named Pat, and he's retired now. He's not undercover, but I'm not giving his last name. But he's a good dude, and he was very good at identifying if someone was competent or if they weren't competent. And if he identified you as being competent, he would basically loosen the leash. And then he would do that more and more. And then after you had worked for him for a year or two, you pretty much he had fidelity in that you were going to do the best thing possible. He always gave top cover. So if you went out and something happened, and like let's say I had to go interview a 7th floor official or somebody like that, and they were pissed off because of the line of questioning, or because they felt insulted that they're a CIS officer and I'm just a GS-14, I'm there and I got to squeeze them a little bit, then they get pissed off and call the inspector general, and then they would talk to my boss. The guy always had top cover. So I think that was not a challenging thing for me. But after he left, I know the guy who replaced him. And he's not a bad guy, but he is not a leader. No, he is not a leader at all. And he would be the first guy to not give you top cover. So 1,000,000%, he could go out and tell you, yeah, you can do this, regardless, whatever your investigative plan is, you can go do this. And then you go and do it, and it doesn't work out, or you have a senior official get pissed off because you had to ask him some questions. He'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't say they could do this or this or this. And that, the fluidity of the top cover that you had was, it was very discouraging, to say the least. My direct supervisor, phenomenal guy, Mitch, phenomenal. And he would not hesitate to call you out, and if you did something wrong, and he was able to do that because just a great guy, man. But also a hard worker, and he's younger than me, but a great mentor in that setting. And he took my leash off when I was working for him. But anything I did, he gave me top cover on, and I didn't fuck anything up. I mean, trust me, I wasn't perfect, but I didn't do anything catastrophic where he couldn't. I can't recall a time where he had to give me top cover, but no, the top cover and having good men and women who are leaders there that will provide top cover for you and provide you with the oversight without micromanaging is paramount. And the majority of the IC lacks that.
Let's talk about the micromanagement part. Is it inherent with people going up to the management level within the agency to become micromanagers, or do they learn that as they going up the ranks?
Both.
You were in the special operation groups, and most of those groups work as a team, in a team concept. You're only part of a team, and everybody learns from each other, from the weaknesses of one, the other could learn, and vice versa. And you cross-train on MOSs. Let's say you are the medic, you will teach the guys as much as they could absorb in case something happened to you within a mission. The same thing, the communications guy or the weapons guy. The cross-training and the does this happen within the agency? Do you have that type of camaraderie within the intelligence community?
No.
Don't you think the lack of that teamwork and not being individuals, just making yourself look good so you could get promoted, don't you think that will make the agency much stronger? I know that there was a time, especially in the Bob Levinson case, Robert Levinson, after he finished with the FBI, he was recruited by the CIA to go to the island of Kirsch. And it wasn't the operational part of the CIA, but it was actually the
analytics, analysis,
the analytical part. And a lot of the people in the agency didn't even know that this operation was going on, and it cost him his life. What can we learn from that case so it doesn't happen to other people in the future?
That even though it was analytics who recruited him, what he was doing was operational. If you look at it at face value, he wasn't sitting in he was doing something operational based upon what I've read. I don't know this through anything I've been exposed to at the agency. Based upon what I've read, and then talks with good dudes who know about it. such as yourself, he one hand wasn't talking to the other. So if Bob went overseas and he got rolled up, and there was not a contingency plan to get him out, there wasn't a contingency plan because the DI, Director of Intelligence, which it used to be the DA, Director of Analysis, but now it's DI. If the DI wasn't talking to the DO, or not that the IG needs to get involved with operational planning, but Office of General Counsel would need to talk to them. And then you got to understand the HC has no authority to conduct a criminal investigation overseas. Bob Levinson was a U.S. citizen. Was he a dual U.S. and Israeli, or was he just U.S.?
No, he was a citizen. You know, his career spanned from the Drug Enforcement Administration, and then afterwards he went to the FBI. Well knowledge in a lot of fields, included his Spanish when he spoke Spanish.
He's Colombian, right?
I'm talking about a very articulate, intelligent, one of the best human beings I ever met, with a beautiful family, you know, and at an age when he got recruited to go on that case, there was nobody in ground to help him. I'm talking about he was there by himself. He was the longest held captive American overseas. And he died in the hands of his captors. You know, years after, maybe one day they will declassify everything. I mean, they made the Levinson Act to give some protections for Americans that are kidnapped overseas. But there needs to be some type of change within the intelligence community to protect their assets, to protect their sources. And I think about, you know, I wasn't in Afghanistan. I served during the Cold War, but you had complete units that helped the United States fight the war on terror, especially in Afghanistan. We abandoned them. We left them with the people that they were fighting. And those people are now with our weapons, they have our equipment, and we abandoned them. Something has to change, because if we want people to work for us and to help us, we need to have some empathy somehow.
Well, so I want to take it back to the Levinson thing for just a second. It was about a year ago. I received a phone call, and it was to protect a guy, and the money was good, and so it was easy schedule. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. And the guy who called me when we started getting off the phone, I was like, I'm on the hook now. I agreed to it, so I'm not going to back out. But who's the client? And he told me who the client was. And I don't have a personal beef with this guy at all, but he's one of the most hated men in the United States, who had just retired from the government. And I was like, are you kidding me? This guy? And they're like, no. And the majority of people would ask, what's the threat posture? And I didn't ask that. That was not my first question. My first question was, how's his health? Number one. Number two, does the vehicle that we're transporting him, does it have an AED? So I'm looking at the guy's health first, and then let's look at the threat posture. And then after that, let's look at how we outfitted. And I'm saying that because nobody had asked that question about how's his health. Do we have an AED? Because the guy was 83 years old. Do we have those things in place? I'm more concerned about him falling over dead of a heart attack or a stroke or something like that. So that was my concern. I recognize that at his being an octogenarian, man, that his health definitely played a factor. That was also a risk. So we had to be aware of it. With Levinson, man, why in the hell would you want to send, even though Bob had lost a lot of weight, why would you want to send a guy with diabetes to Kirsch by himself with no exit plan? What does that mean? They didn't give a shit about Bob Levinson. They didn't care.
They didn't. I take it very personal because he was a good friend of mine, and I take it very personal because I travel overseas quite often, and I know the dangers. Anytime you step foot in a foreign country where Americans are not liked, places like Venezuela, Colombia, certain places in Europe, certain places in the Middle East, in Africa. You go to, you could go to Mozambique, Angola, Congo, Zimbabwe, Sierra Leone, and you putting your life, you're taking your life into your own hands. The embassies, good luck calling them. Nobody, you don't have an army or somebody coming to save you, and I think that there has to be rules and certain criteria that if you're going to send an asset overseas, there has to be somebody there with a contingency plan in case things go wrong. Not only did he have diabetes, but he got kidnapped straight from his hotel.
Well, first of all, sorry for your loss, number one. And I mean that with the deepest sincerity. That sucks. Bob was a grown-ass man. And I think, and him, I don't know the guy. He was a dear friend of yours. I think he probably recognized the risk there. And I think doing the jobs he had done before, man, William, this is something I struggle with whenever I travel, is before when I would travel, I always knew that if I got rolled up, it's only going to be a matter of time before somebody comes looking for me. As a CA guy, it's only a matter of time. And they would do whatever it took to get you back. They're not doing it to get you back for your well-being. They're doing it to get you back to make sure, number one, that you don't get sweated and flip on something, that somebody squeezes you and you divulge classified information that may damage national security. And then number two, you gotta understand, if you're working for them, for any government organization, and you get jammed up, what I've seen, let's say you get killed overseas, what I've seen is typically people will get a posthumous promotion, number one. Their family gets an annuity at that pay grade forever. They get the life insurance, and then they'll typically give the person an exceptional performance award. For the lowest one I've seen for somebody who's gotten killed was $25,000. So we're not getting them back or going after them because for their own benefit. We're getting them back, number one, so they don't spill any information they may have. Number two, so we can prevent and mitigate the long-term payout between the life insurance, the annuity, the exceptional performance award. That's why they do it. They don't do it because they are legitimately have an interest in that person's well-being. They do it through a fiscal lens. I know that sounds horrible, and I think there are a lot of things that government people will hear me say that they'll agree with, and I think there's a lot that they'll disagree with. But again, having been operational and then in an office who provides oversight to CA, it just is what it is. That's how it goes. And again, I would be more than happy to sit across from someone and have that dialogue. Now you put and debate them on that. Now you consider Bob Levinson. He wasn't a government employee, so you don't have to worry about. And before they sent Bob to Kirsch, they would know what Bob had known regarding prior operations. What if he was to get rolled up, captured, and sweated. What has he been read into and exposed to that he could divulge that might compromise national security? At that stage in his career, the majority of work that Bob had done in the government, I think, and this is not saying anything pejorative about Bob, but it was probably antiquated. So the information that he could provide the damage to national security would have been minimal. Number one, but then number two, his life insurance company is probably not going to pay out if they find out he got killed in Kirsch. No, an actuary would look at that and be like, "Hey, we didn't know he was doing this. Otherwise, we wouldn't have covered him." And the federal government sure as hell is not going to pay out for a contractor contracted by whoever the hell he was contracted to go to Kirsch to look for this. And you and I have talked about it. It was the cigarette smuggling and to look for the Jewish guy and the radical and all this other stuff. Yeah, there were bigger fish to fry at that time. Because what year was that when Bob got when he went missing?
I don't remember the exact year, but I mean, he was held almost for 14 years, something like that, and I'm not sure exactly.
It was post Cold War, but pre 9/11, correct?
Right.
All right. So then 9/11 kicks off. He's still in captivity. They didn't give a shit about Bob Levinson, man. I know it sounds horrible, but it's a fact of life.
Yeah. Let's talk about it because we got to get ready to wrap it up a little bit. Let's talk about your company. How? Tell me a little bit about your company, how they could get a hold of you. Do you have any plans to write a book? Is the book out so people could read your story?
I do have a plan to write a book, and actually, I started whenever I left CAA. I took off for a year, and pretty much was just a house husband, and so I got accustomed to being a house husband, and then I incorporated not long after I took off, but I didn't start functional until probably a year and change after. But it's feast and famine, and so I'll write in the interim. The best way right now, as a matter of fact, I was on the phone with my I have a chief operating officer, and then I have a chief of international affairs, and he and I were talking today about starting a website where people could reach out directly and email me through there. And I was like, dude, I've been so busy. If I'm not, and I have been working on the book in a conceptual stage, and I've got, I don't know, probably 40, 50 pages written. I should have done much more by now. And like you, when you and I were talking last night, over the past, since I left, I should have already gone to law school, honestly, to tell you the truth. And the book already should have been written, and I shouldn't have. I'm not going to say I should not have started. I should have, would have, could have.
It's
But
the procrastination process. As we get older, we procrastinate.
well, for me, it's not procrastination. I'm like, so I can write, and so I'll write, and then and it's probably been 2 years since I put pen to paper on that thing, but I can do that, or I can be on the phone consulting with people, or I can travel. But I've not put, again, there's me, my wife will do some work. I've got people doing other things for me, or with me. I've got my chief operating officer. I've got my chief of international affairs and policy, good guy. And he and I were talking today about getting a website put up. And so I think we're about to have that launched. But the best way right now for someone to reach out is just through LinkedIn. And it's like when I was talking to Danny Lee the other night, I was like, if somebody reaches out, I'll talk to anybody. I don't give a shit. If you're a nerd or a weirdo, I'll just block you. That's it. But
what's the name of your company?
ABY.
And you do consulting.
Yeah.
All right.
Both on a practical lens, and then also it's I'll get a call. Can you fly to San Diego to interrogate somebody? Can you go to Haiti to train somebody? Can you go to Hawaii to train people? Can you go to Israel to be operational? Can you go to Haiti to be operational? Can you go to Juarez, Medellin, Bogota, Cartagena to be operational. So you never know what's coming across when the phone rings. But with that being said, it's like when I called you yesterday, you and I, we were going to talk before this, and I'm not considering you a client, but I consider you someone who is business advantageous. And I had a guy at the house, and we were about to have my roof replaced, and we were talking about that. And I was like, "Hey, dude, time out. I have a very important person that I need to get on the phone as soon as possible. He's doing important stuff. He's a very busy guy, a valuable resource. I'm not going to neglect my time with William Acosta to talk about a roof. So I got to do this." And so when it comes down to, and I'm not saying you're a client, I consider you more a partner in this field. That I think once you establish and then cultivate those relationships, it pays dividends. And man, if somebody wants me to go, I had a guy reach out about going and talking to legislators in New York State about the best plan for school shooting. I've never done that, to develop a plan to mitigate the potential for school shooting. But looking at it through both having been defensive and offensive, both counterterrorism and anti-terrorism, I don't think it's rocket surgery, but I also recognize, and when I say rocket surgery, people say, you mean rocket science? No, I mean rocket surgery, because that is something that's completely foreign. I don't think that developing a plan for that would be that difficult, but I also recognize my limitations and my exposure and my experience in a field like that. But I said, you know what, I'll do whatever I can. I'll help you out. And a lot of stuff I do is pro bono, man. It's free.
All right, Robert, we gotta wrap it up right now. Stay. Don't turn off your thing. This concludes this program for today. We're gonna have a second part because there's so much to talk about. So stay.
Oh, we got a lot.
That's all for today's episode of Equalizer. We've just heard reflections from Robert Bunch on a career that has expanded the military, defense, and intelligence community and continues today as a leader in the private sector, consulting. His journey is a reminder of the complexities, dedication, and constant vigilance required to keep our nation secure. We want to extend a sincere thank you to Robert for sharing his insights and experience. Thank you to our fantastic audience for tuning in. Your support and engagement makes this conversation possible. And a special note of appreciation to our dedicated production team, whose hard work behind the scenes ensures every episode is a success. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and follow me on the links provided on the screen. Stay tuned for more Equalizer episodes, where we continue to exploit the voices making a difference in national and global affairs. Thank you for listening, and God bless you.